as roller coaster enthusiasts, we're all about our stats for coasters. Well, some of us are at least. To me, stats are just numbers. Personally, I care more about the ride experience rather than the stats. But good stats on a coaster tend to lead to a good experience on them, for the most part. This is State of Stats, a series where we cover each state in the USA and focus on one or more coaster stat per state. As the pilot episode for this series, we're going to cover a rather generic stat, being height. We'll cover every state and briefly talk about the tallest operating coaster in that state. If there was a coaster in the past that was taller than the current tallest operating coaster for that state, I'll mention that as well. To make this easy, we are going to go in alphabetical order by state. This isn't a ranking video series, we're just listing state by stats, hence the name, State of Stats. We've got a lot of states to cover here, so this series will be much more rapid fire than my usual videos. But first, a moment of silence for the states with no coasters. Alabama. This is a case where the tallest coaster in the state is currently standing but not operating, or SBNO, but it is likely to reopen eventually. The tallest operating coaster in Alabama as of this video is Rollin' Thunder at Tropic Falls Theme Park, which stands at 114.8 feet. This is a Zamperla Rolling Thunder model. Rampage at Alabama Adventure is the tallest standing coaster in the state, and that can claim the title of the tallest operating coaster in the state when it opens back up. Alaska. Not much to go off of here. They've only ever had one coaster in their history, and it's at the Alaska State Fair. This coaster being Aftershock, an Interpark Zyklon Galaxy model. Aftershock stands at a staggering 32.8 feet. If Alaska were to get its own episode of Originality Check, it would score 0%. This coaster was relocated from another park, it's a cloned model, and the name is not original either. But we're getting a little sidetracked here. If you want some originality, check out my Originality Check series. Plenty more coming with that series. Arizona. As of right now, the tallest operating coaster here is Desert Storm at Castles and Coasters, which stands at 90 feet. This is a Hopkins looping coaster. In 2025, the new tallest coaster in Arizona will be Hot Wheels Twin Mill Racer at Mattel Adventure Park. This coaster will stand at 116 feet and will likely hold on to its title of tallest coaster in Arizona for a long time. Arkansas. The tallest coaster here will be X-Coaster at Magic Springs. This bizarre coaster stands at 151 feet. It's a Mauer Sky Loop coaster. This is also the only one of its kind in the country. California. Not much of a surprise here, but California has the most coasters in the country. I'll cover that stat in another episode. The tallest standing coaster in California is Superman Escape from Krypton, an an Intamin reverse freefall coaster. This coaster stands at 415 feet, and it was the first coaster structure to break the 400-foot mark. However, this coaster has been SBNO since September of 2024. With all of these sudden, unannounced roller coaster closures from the Six Flags Corporation, I wouldn't be surprised if this coaster is on its last legs. Also wouldn't be surprised if it never opens again. Since it is not operating at the time of this video, the tallest coaster in California goes to its neighbor, Goliath, which stands at 235 feet. This is a Giovanola mega coaster that does close to nothing, except goes fast, and has some pretty decent positive Z's at the end. Colorado. Sadly, the tallest coaster in Colorado is nothing too exciting. Boomerang at Elitch Gardens, which is just that, of a Vekoma Boomerang, which stands at 116.5 feet. If you wanted to go by elevation for tallest coaster, then it would be Cliffhanger at Glenwood Caverns. The coaster itself only stands at 60 feet, but stands at the highest point of the park at an elevation of 7,160 feet. This is also the highest coaster in North America when it comes to land elevation. I feel like this is cheating though, so I personally won't consider this the tallest coaster in Colorado. If you want to, that's your tea. Connecticut. The tallest coaster in this state is Phobia Fear Coaster at Lake Compounds, standing at 150 feet. This ride just is what it is. It's a premier Skyrocket 2, having only 2 cars on its train and no comfort colors. Florida. This is pretty much the capital of theme parks in the USA. We'll find Florida's tallest coaster at Busch Gardens Tampa with Iron Gwazi, standing at 206 feet. This is my #1 overall coaster, and many other coaster enthusiasts seem to agree. Nothing much to say about this coaster that isn't already known. This ride is just perfection. Georgia. Goliath, a B&M hyper coaster that opened in 2006 and stands at 200 feet. While the drop itself isn't quite 200 feet, it stands at that height and is considered the hypercoaster model by B&M. I don't know what B&M was doing when they made this ride, but I wish that they would do it again. This ride is on drugs. Idaho. Here we'll find another Aftershock, standing at 177.2 feet. But this one is a Vekoma giant inverted boomerang. This was relocated to Silverwood in 2008 and is the last of its kind in the country. Illinois. No surprise that we'll find the state's tallest coaster at Six Flags Great America with Raging Bull, standing at 202 feet. This is one of the first B&M hypercoasters with a non-traditional hypercoaster layout. Not quite my cup of tea, but it's still fun. Indiana. This is one of the more rare occurrences where the tallest coaster in the state is a wooden coaster, and that would be Voyage, standing at 159 feet. In person, this coaster looks even taller. Again, not much to say about this coaster that isn't already known. If you haven't ridden Voyage yet, get yourself to Holiday World and ride this ride. And some good gravy, because why not? Iowa. This state seems to be an up-and-coming state for roller coasters and theme parks. Adventureland, not too far from Des Moines, is one of the most underrated parks in the country, and it truly is a hidden gem. And at this park, we will find Monster, which stands at 133 feet. This is easily the best Gerstlauer in the country. This coaster alone makes this park worth visiting, but this park overall is also amazing. If you're ever in the area, you have to visit this park. Kansas. Not really the best state when it comes to coasters, hosting a handful of Little Dippers, and I'm going to consider all of them as the tallest coaster in the state. None of these have their heights listed anywhere, but other Alan Herschel Little Dippers are listed between 12 to 15 feet. So we'll just go with that. In 2026, another Mattel Adventure Park is set to open with another Hot Wheels Twin Mill Racer coaster. While none of the stats are known for this coaster, this will likely take the title as the tallest coaster in Kansas when it opens. Kentucky. The tallest coaster to have ever existed here was Chang at Kentucky Kingdom, which stood at 154 feet. This was relocated to Great Adventure in 2011, and well, rest in pieces. But Kentucky Kingdom is still home to the current tallest coaster in the state, which will be Storm Chaser, standing at 100 feet. This is one of the most underrated RMCs out there. I just remember this ride blew my mind. Maybe it was just running good because it was raining that day, and RMCs tend to run better in the rain. I think it would be safe to say this is also the best coaster in the state. Louisiana. Another Vekoma Boomerang makes it onto this list, with Raging Cajun, standing at 116.5 feet.
But Ryan, what about Six Flags New Orleans? Surely there was something taller there.
Yeah, sorry, no. Their tallest coaster was also a Vekoma Boomerang. Sorry, Louisiana, you're stuck with the Boomerang as your tallest coaster for the foreseeable future. Maine. This state is home to a rather underrated CCI coaster, Excalibur, which stands at 100 feet. The first half of this ride is pretty good. The second half of this ride does kind of lose some steam, but overall it's a fun ride. The only thing higher in this state is my love for a damn good lobster roll. Maryland, my home state. While I love Maryland, and there's many cool things to do in Maryland, our coasters low-key suck. The tallest coaster in Maryland is Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America, standing at 197 feet. This intimate mega coaster is okay at best. It has a good finale, that's about it. I'll do what every Marylander does to make things better. I'll just throw some Old Bay on it. Now we're talking. Massachusetts. Here we will find another Superman-themed coaster, Superman the Ride, standing at 208 feet. This intimate mega coaster gets a lot of praise among coaster enthusiasts. Some even saying that it has the greatest layout of all time for a steel coaster. I just don't see it personally. It's fine, it's not a bad ride, but nowhere near close to the best steel coaster in the world. Maybe at the time when it opened, possibly, but by today's standards, I'm sorry, no. Take your win, Superman, for being not only the tallest coaster in Massachusetts, but also the tallest coaster in New England. Michigan. Here, another wooden coaster will take this title, with Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure, standing at 122 feet. This is easily the best CCI coaster that I've been on, and probably the best one out there, period. I wish this coaster was easier to get to. I think it's safe to say that this is one of the best wooden coasters out there. Not quite the best, but somewhere in top 10 for sure. Minnesota. Here we will find a not-so-wild thing at Valley Fair. This Morgan Hypercoaster stands at 207 feet, and is one of the most underwhelming hypercoasters that I've been on. It's smooth, it's pretty, that's about it. I guess take what you can get, Valley Fair. Mississippi. Home to only 3 roller coasters. None of them have their heights listed. Looking at all 3 of them, I'm going to assume that it's this one here. Rolling Thunder. This is an SBF Visa spinning coaster with the hamster wheel cars. I've ridden one of these at Myrtle Beach. They're an experience for sure. Missouri. One of the more underrated states for coasters. By no means the best, but it holds its own. The tallest coaster in Missouri is Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast Coaster. This coaster stands at 218 feet.
But Ryan, the entire train doesn't reach that height, so it can't count, right?
I guess there could be an argument made there. If we don't want to count this one, then let's look at the second tallest coaster in Missouri. Mamba at Worlds of Fun, standing at 205 feet. Take your pick. Montana. Home to only one operating coaster, being Flathead Lake Alpine Coaster. For mountain coasters, it's tough to say what their max height is, as most of them don't list it. Most of them list what their land elevation is, which I guess in this case can work, since there are no other operating coasters in Montana. The only other coaster in Montana's history that could have been taller than this one was Monster Mouse, which operated at Amusement Park Drive-In from 2009 to 2011. A drive-in amusement park. Interesting concept. The height of this coaster isn't listed either, but just by looking at pictures of it, it was was probably taller than a Flathead Alpine coaster. But it's no longer in operation, so Flathead, take the win. Nebraska. Here's another state where it's tough to know for sure what the tallest coaster is. Nebraska only has 3 operating coasters, and the tallest, to my best guess, is Tim's Runaway Grain Wagons at Vala's Pumpkin Patch. This is a Zamperla family coaster. This specific coaster's height isn't listed, but clones of it average around 13 feet, so I'll go with that. The tallest coaster in Nebraska's history was Jackrabbit at Capitol Beach Park. This was a John A. Miller wooden coaster that stood at 60 feet. Nevada. We have a few contenders here. The tallest operating coaster in Nevada is Big Apple Coaster, standing at 203 feet. In my opinion, this is one of the worst coasters out there. There's close to no redeeming value to it, but hey, it's the tallest operating coaster in the state. And then we have Desperado at Buffalo Bills Casino. This is the tallest standing coaster in Nevada, standing at 209 feet. This coaster hasn't operated since 2019, and the future of this coaster is uncertain. The tallest coaster to ever exist in Nevada was Speed the Ride at NASCAR Cafe. This was a Premier Rides LAM shuttle loop coaster and stood at 224 feet. The entire train never made it to that height, but I'm giving the tallest coaster title to Big Apple Coaster anyway, so that doesn't matter. New Hampshire. The tallest coaster to ever operate in this state was Canopy Corkscrew. This was an Aero corkscrew coaster which stood at 73 feet. The tallest operating coaster in New Hampshire is at the same park, being Untamed. This coaster stands at 72.2 feet. Wait, really? They couldn't just go an extra foot or two? Thanks, Gerstlauer. New Jersey. Well, this one should be obvious. King the Ka. Well, tallest to operate at least. Rest in power, King. The tallest operating coaster in New Jersey now is at the same park, and that would be Nitro, standing at 230 feet. Kind of a big downgrade from King the Ka, which stood at 456 feet, but I guess Nitro is fine. Thank you, Richard Zimmerman. We really appreciate it. Keep doing you. Not really. Just stop being you. It's fine. It ain't the best, it ain't the worst, but it's a B&M Hyper, so it's fun. New Mexico. Not too many coasters here. Their tallest is New Mexico Rattler at Cliffs Amusement Park, which stands at 80 feet. The only fun fact about this coaster is that CCI went bankrupt while they were building this ride, and Cliffs Amusement Park had to finish the ride on their own. New York. Here we will find a mirrored version of Maryland's tallest coaster, Ride of Steel, standing at 208 feet. This version opened before the one in Maryland. While this one has better restraints, I feel like the one at Six Flags America just runs better. North Carolina. Some could say that the tallest coaster for North Carolina could count for both North and South Carolina, since the coaster does travel through both states. But seeing that the station is placed in North Carolina and it's listed as a North Carolina coaster, I'll count it for North Carolina only. And that would be Fury 325, standing at, well, 325 feet. We all know what this masterpiece is. While it's not my #1 coaster, I could consider this one of, if not the best coaster in the country. North Dakota. Home to only one coaster ever, Runaway Train. This is a Wisdom Rides Dragon Wagon. No specs are given for this coaster, but it's the only coaster to ever exist in this state, so no competition. Ohio. Arguably the coaster capital of the country. Top Thrill 2, it could have been you, but Zamperla doesn't know how to coaster. The tallest operating coaster in Ohio as of right now is Millennium Force, standing at 310 feet. When, or if, Zamperla can figure their shit out, Top Thrill 2 can claim this title, standing at 420 feet. Time will tell. I'm not very optimistic. Oklahoma. The tallest operating coaster is Silver Bullet at Frontier City. This Schwarzkopf Looping Star stands at 80 feet and has one of the slowest lift hills I've ever seen. There's one coaster in Oklahoma that could have topped this in height, and that was Excalibur. This coaster was relocated to Frontier City from Six Flags Astro World, but it was never assembled. This was an era mine train that would have stood at 88 feet. The trains were later sent off to Six Flags over Texas, and the track was scrapped. Oregon. Not much going on in this state for coasters. Its tallest coaster is Adrenaline Peak at Oaks Amusement Park, standing at 72 feet. Pennsylvania. The tallest standing coaster in the state is Steel Curtain, standing at 220 feet. If S&S can't get this ride stable, it can claim that title back. But as of now, that title goes to Cannon Millennium at Hershey Park, standing at 210 feet. Kennywood keeps advertising that Steel Curtain will be open for 2025. I guess we'll see about that. South Carolina. This may be a little controversial, so somebody try to argue my logic here. Technically, Intimidator, or Thunderstriker, is the tallest coaster in South Carolina. While the address for the coaster says it is in Charlotte, North Carolina, just looking on a map, both the station and the entire coaster is in South Carolina. So I'm going to count this as the tallest coaster in South Carolina, standing at 232 feet. If you don't want to count this as the tallest coaster in South Carolina, then enjoy Swamp Fox, standing at 72 feet, which to be honest is a very fun ride. South Dakota. Only 3 operating coasters in this state. The tallest here is Rushmore Mountain Coaster. Its height isn't listed anywhere, but the only other real competition is Humpty Dumpty's Great Fall, which only stands about 13 feet. Looking at Rushmore Mountain Coaster, this easily tops 13 feet at the tallest point of the ride. Tennessee. RCDB, for some reason, lists the tallest coaster in the state as Tennessee Tornado, which somehow stands at 163 feet. But take a look at Wild Eagle, there's no height listed, at least not on this website. But Wild Eagle is definitely the tallest coaster in the state, standing at 210 feet. If only this wing coaster actually had a drop that tall. The drop itself is only 135 feet. It may not be the best B&M wing coaster out there, but I would say it has one of the best settings for one. Texas. Here we will find Titan as the tallest coaster in the state, standing at 245 feet. This is very similar to Goliath at Magic Mountain, but has some minor differences. Overall, a fast but boring coaster. Utah. There's only one major amusement park in this state, but it's a great park, and we'll find the tallest coaster here, which would be Cannibal, standing at 197 feet. This in-house designed coaster is one of the most unique coasters in the country, starting with the elevator lift hill, a 116-degree drop, and that awesome lagoon roll. This park is tough to get to, but it is definitely worth a visit. Vermont. There's only 2 mountain coasters in this state to go off of, and neither of them have their max height listed either, so I guess I'll go off land elevation here. That'll give us Timber Ripper Mountain Coaster as the tallest coaster in the state, at an elevation of 375 feet. The coaster itself probably doesn't go more than 20 feet off the ground, but it is what it is. Take your win. Virginia. This one's pretty obvious. I-305, or Pantherian, standing at 305 feet. We all know what this ride is. It's a wonder how this ride is even legal, but I love everything about it. And the new retheme and color scheme look great too. Washington. The tallest coaster to ever operate in this state was Dipper at Playland Park. This stood at 85 feet. This coaster operated until 1961. The tallest operating coaster in the state is Timberhawk at Wild Waves, standing at 75 feet. This is a rare SNS wooden coaster. West Virginia. The tallest coaster to operate in West Virginia was Thunderbolt Express, standing at 56 feet. This was an aero shuttle loop coaster, which was relocated from Kings Island, which was known as Demon then. Thunderbolt Express operated at Camden Park until 1999. The tallest operating coaster in West Virginia is Big Dipper at the same park. This is a National Amusement Devices wooden coaster. This opened in 1958 and still going strong. I've been meaning to get to this park for a while, but just haven't had a chance to. Hopefully this year I can. Wisconsin. While mostly known for their cheese curds and their abundance of water parks, there's also a few amusement parks thrown in there too. The tallest coaster in Wisconsin is Hades 360. This monstrous gravity group stands at 136 feet. Hades 360 is probably the most aggressive wooden coaster that I've been on. It's amazing, it's fun, but it's very difficult to marathon. Last and possibly least, Wyoming. Home to only one coaster ever, and that would be Cowboy Coaster. This is also a mountain coaster. The height isn't listed anywhere, but it's the only coaster in that state, so there you go. And there you have it, that's the tallest operating coaster in every state. As I said before, this series isn't meant to be a ranking series. We're just covering the stats of coasters per state. But if you want to know the top 15 for this topic, here you go. That'll do it for this pilot episode of State of Stats. What did you guys think of this video? Do you want to see more of this series? If so, what stats should I cover in future episodes? Alright guys, I'll wrap the video up here. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next loop.